Hello everyone, I am Arsene Gasparian. Welcome to ABC Media's special show. One of the biggest stories in Armenia right now is the conflict between the Armenian Apostolic Church and Armenian authorities. Joining us now is Robert Amsterdam, the founder of Amsterdam and Partners law firm, globally recognized international lawyer with many decades of experience of high-profile cases across the world. Mr. Amsterdam has been following this conflict very closely. And thank you for coming, Robert. It's great to have you here.
Well, it's a privilege always to be in Armenia.
So you described the situation in Armenia as an attack on Christianity. And before getting to my first question, I would like to bring some facts and evidence from the report of House of Commons of the British Parliament. North Korea, Somalia, Yemen, Libya, Sudan, Nigeria, Pakistan, Afghanistan have the highest rates of reported persecution against Christians and considered the most dangerous places to be Christian. The cases include imprisonment in labor camps, torture, execution. Frankly, I don't want Armenia tomorrow to be in the list of these countries. This report also indicates that more than 380 million Christians live in situations subject to high levels of persecution and discrimination. And this is happening in the 21st century. The NGO Open Doors, which supports Christians worldwide, estimates the number of Christians killed for faith-related reasons worldwide average 5,000 and more every year, which is 13 Christians per day. About 8,000 Christian properties and churches under attack in 2024, 2025. So many scholars and policymakers agree with you that the situation is an attack on Christianity. But what specific actions by the Armenian government clearly violate international religious freedom standards?
Well, look, let's be very blunt. In no country that you've mentioned has any political leader spoken with such contempt about the leader of Christianity in their country as Pashinyan has about the Catholicos. His language is a language more suitable to the gutter than to political discourse. His invasion of the liturgy, his suggestion about changes to the liturgy, his idea that he wants to set up a special council to replace the Catholicos, these are interventions almost without parallel. They reflect either a narcissism or a belief that he has to satisfy certain Azeri demands that reflect a situation completely out of balance and representing a terrible risk and, in fact, a certainty that Armenia is now in a position where its governments are violating Article 9 and Article 11 of the European Convention of Human Rights relating to both freedom of religion and freedom of association. I could take you through many cases before the ECHR that are similar to what Pashinyan is doing, but Pashinyan is setting up almost a special track. I mean, his language concerning the church is so wildly disrespectful. His behavior, his invasions of churches at the last minute without proper direction, which resulted in the persecution of a young boy who was in serious physical pain. His instructions to courts to overturn decisions of the Catholicos. This is almost without precedent, certainly in any country that is under the European Convention of Human Rights. So Armenia has crossed a number of red lines already.
Okay, since you mentioned European Convention on Human Rights and other European institutions such as European Court of Human Rights, let's briefly turn our attention to Armenia's neighbor, to fascinating and beautiful country of Georgia. European Union and European Union high-ranking bureaucrats and its members, such as France, Germany, and others, always supported European integration of Georgia, which was a key goal of former President Saakashvili. Currently, he's serving a long prison sentence after several convictions. Look at him now. Currently, he looks like this. He's painfully thin, looks like he's dying in prison. His skin and bone is practically wasting away. And I haven't seen any reports or any high-level statements from either Brussels or Washington, D.C. or London specifically addressing his health conditions. It seems they used him and they forgot about their partner. How can the Armenian Apostolic Church and her followers rely on these European and Western institutions?
Look, let's be very clear. I don't think you can. I think the lessons we've learned time and again that we in Armenia have to rely on ourselves. And that's why it's so important to vote. That's why it's so important that when you have a parliamentary party that has as its platform that it is going to destroy the structure of the church, that you consider it your duty to vote and make sure that you weigh in when you have a political party that says they're going to destroy a 1,700-year-old church. Now, Pashinyan will say, well, we're not destroying it, we're restructuring it. There is no home under international law for a political party to have that in their platform. And the fact that we had over 40 heads of state here and no one commented is a dramatic shame. But I will tell you, I've been defending Christians my entire career. The last 3 years engaged in Ukraine, defending the Ukrainian Orthodox Church against the horrific attacks of the Zelensky regime. Zelensky wants to control that church because he wants to control everything in the country. And thankfully, in the last month, the government there appears to have relented and appears to now recognize that rather than this fabrication that the church in Ukraine was taking orders from Russia, they have recognized now that there's a new head of the presidential administration that in fact the church is Ukrainian, as is the fact that most of the men on the front lines are members of our church. So in Ukraine, it is the church that has stood up for itself and the people of Ukraine. And I am saying to the people of Armenia that they have to do the same thing.
That's a very important message you shared, that the followers of the Armenian Apostolic Church and the church should rely on no one but themselves in this case.
Listen, in all of the cases I am participating in globally, I always tell people that these international institutions are very often serving the interests of the major powers and not the smaller countries.
Right.
It's impressive
Very
to note.
true.
It's impressive to note that you had 40 leaders here. And what did that highlight? It highlighted a speech from Aliyev where he called 19 Christian martyrs war criminals without any commentary. And one other very important fact, with all the crap, you'll excuse me, about commitment, the only commitment the EU has that's a contract now is a commitment to support the rule of law in Armenia. And have they done it? No. They are contractually bound to do it. Pashinyan has run a tin pot dictatorship. He's thrown opposition leaders in jail. He's attacked the church. At one point, we had a quarter of the bishops that are in the country in jail, and the European Union has stayed silent, shamefully silent.
Sure, and given the Armenian Apostolic Church has a unique constitutional status, and I asked our editors to put the Article 18, this unique constitutional status and privileges in Armenia, how do you distinguish between persecution of religion and conflict between political power centers?
Look, I think in this situation, it is important to be dealing with the facts on the ground. And the facts on the ground are that the church is not part of the political makeup of the country. The church has every right, as we've seen with Pope Leo in the Catholic Church, has every right to speak on the broadest issues of the day, such as war and peace. Mm-hmm. And the Catholicos and other members have spoken out about issues of war and peace. But beyond that, they have not attempted to exert influence inside the government, nor should the government. Incredible that Pashinyan wants to change the liturgy. I mean, these are things completely outside his realm.
Right. In other countries, there are also mixed or localized conflicts between governments and religious institutions. What makes the Armenian case fundamentally different from those situations?
Look, as I said, I think the Armenian situation is different. Number one, Armenia has a 93% membership in the church, almost unheard of globally. Number two, the Armenian church for 1,700 years has been the cradle of Christianity. And the Armenian church has been the crucible of the Armenian people. Under the Soviets, it was the church that they attempted to destroy time and time again. And I will say this, many of the tools Pashinyan is trying to use, including developing the schism within the church, comes right from the Soviet playbook. And in respect to Pashinyan, I would say I'm a student of the Soviet Union. I have a degree in Soviet political communication. I was in Russia under Brezhnev. I've seen this all before. I was in the Lavra under the churches in Kyiv in 1975. Nothing that Pashinyan is doing to destroy the church is something I haven't seen before.
Right, because religious freedom isn't just about allowing worship. It's about ensuring the state does not weaponize law against religious institutions. So now let's talk about arrests of high-ranking clergy. So authorities claim, by the way, so this is an important law in Armenia, and many of our citizens, before we talk about the arrests of high-ranking clergy, it was adopted in 1991, and many citizens of Armenia, they don't know that this law of freedom of consciousness and religious organizations have this section 18 where it clearly says that the state should guarantee the right of the members of religious organizations to take part in the civil and political life on an equal basis with other citizens. And you mentioned also the arrest of high-ranking clergy. So authorities claim that any arrests of senior clergy are based on specific legal allegations, not religion. So now look, from left to right, Archbishop Bakrat Galistanian, 11 months under detention. There are also 18 supporters of Archbishop Bakrat who are also placed under arrest as a preventive measure. Archbishop Mikhail Ajapahan, primate of the Diocese of Shirak, arrested in June last year, and then he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. His health condition is incompatible with detention. Currently, his detention was replaced with house arrest and a ban on absence. Archbishop Arshak Khachatryan, Chancellor of the Mother See of Holy Echmiadzin, arrested in December 2025, detained for several months, currently under administrative supervision. And Bishop Makartich Proshan was arrested and detained in December 2025. Again, currently his detention was changed to house arrest. So what makes you confident that these cases represent religious persecution rather than legitimate law enforcement, as authorities claim?
Firstly, under Article 5, jail is a last resort. So simply on the basis of this lengthy detention, it is absolutely a violation of Bagrat's human rights. So we have to look at, number one, the idea that so many of them have been detained illegally, which is somewhat common in Armenia. Number two, these men are very well represented by excellent counsel. And it would be disrespectful of me to go into the individual issues that affect all of them, because I would never want to in any way improperly reflect what I know are very legitimate defenses. And none of these individuals, from my review, should be anywhere near a jail. But out of respect both for the judiciary and my colleagues, I don't want to discuss any case other than our case, where, of course, I'm privileged to represent Samuel Karapetyan.
Yeah, my question was related to the evidence which shows a systematic targeting. And
well, when you see this type of number, and you see the behavior of Pashinyan in respect to these church invasions, in respect to the language he uses against the church, to his interference in the liturgy, to his proposed removal of the Catholicos, that says it all. I don't have to deal with the individual cases to say this is a systemic persecution.
So the government's rhetoric and actions have increasingly targeted the Catholicos personally. And Catholicos of all Armenians, Garagin II, is not just an individual. He's a central religious authority in my understanding. And Armenia is a secular country, and the state has a duty of neutrality toward religious leadership. But at what point does political criticism of a religious leader become a violation of religious freedom?
To be very frank with you, at its beginning. There is no continuum here. As long as the Catholicos is performing his duties, as we all know he does, then the interference must stop. Banning him from attending an international conclave in Austria, banning him from attending the burial of his good friend in Georgia, these are cruel and heartless games played by the government that should have absolutely no basis in church-state relations.
Very good, and let's get to my last question. So I would like to talk about patterns of revolutionary politics, because as you know, if we pick up different revolutions, 18th century France, cases of the 20th century, Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, 1917, Cuban Revolution, revolution in China. Revolutionaries usually suppress religious organizations because they viewing them as rivals to their revolutionary unity, as rivals to their authority. And there is a huge amount of literature in the United States about these patterns of revolutionary politics. But those people who don't know about this, they're of course surprised, and it's shocking for them what's happening. And I would like to make a reference to the pre-election program of the ruling party here in Armenia. There are 2 points there that, you know, it clearly said that the removal of de facto head of the Armenian Apostolic Church, that's in the ruling party's program. And it presumes retirement, if I remember correctly. And the second point is adoption of the statute of the Armenian Apostolic Holy Church, which, you know, that statute should establish some mechanism for financial transparency and good conduct of the clergy. What's your assessment of this, Robert?
This is completely contrary to law. The churches are self-governing. The interference in church activities is frankly very similar to what I saw in Ukraine, where you have an autocrat that simply wants to control all voices. The dialectic in Ukraine was that they were trying to allege that somehow there was some form of Russian interference, when everyone knew there wasn't Russian interference. There was a need for Zelensky to gain control. He wanted to interfere. In this case, you have Mr. Pashinyan talking about some clergy oligarchic group, which is a fabrication in his own mind. He wants to break the 1700-year apostolic tradition, a complete renunciation of church doctrine, and set up some new mechanism where he would actually play a role in the appointment of the next Catholicos. I don't know whether he understands what the word apostolic means, because clearly no apostolic church could ever continue with that level of political interference. And frankly, this lack of knowledge of the church was also common with Zelensky's people, who seemed to have no idea about religious dogma himself.
Thank you very much, Robert. Thank you very much for being here. Really interesting insights, and I appreciate you breaking it down. The Armenian Church preserved the nation's language, alphabet, culture, music, literature, and identity for centuries, at times when Armenians had no statehood. Without the church, the Armenian people might not have endured as they have today. In the June parliamentary elections, Armenians must decide what kind of future they want for their country and how they choose to honor the Christian legacy that sustained them. For all of us here at ABC Media's special show, thank you for being with us.